Some things are better left in the dirt, not just because they're old, but because digging them up tends to open doors that were probably shut for a reason. We're talking cryptic remains, eerie artifacts, and discoveries that make archaeologists wish they'd called in sick that day. Some of these findings challenge everything we thought we knew. Others just raise unsettling questions with no good answers. Either way, once they're uncovered, there's no undoing it. Here are 15 discoveries that prove the past isn't always eager to be dug up. Let's start off this list with number 15, the lasting scars of a witch hunt. Witch trials weren't just superstition gone wild, they were public spectacles of fear, paranoia, and brutal injustice. And in Aberdeen, Scotland, one of their most chilling remnants still stands. A stone pillar with an iron ring, once used to restrain accused witches before their executions. It wasn't just a grim decoration, it was a tool of terror. During Aberdeen's Great Witch Hunt of 1597, over 400 people were accused, and nearly 200 met their end in less than a year. The process was horrifyingly efficient. Suspects were tortured into confessing, strangled, and then burned at the stake. Ashes scattered to erase any trace of their existence. Among them was Jane Wishart, executed alongside her son, Thomas Laius. Today, that iron ring remains, a silent witness to a time when fear dictated justice. While the site is now sealed off, it's a haunting reminder that some parts of history should stay buried. History is a mystery. Number 14, Neanderthal cannibalism. When starvation hits, morality becomes a luxury. And in El Cidrón, Spain, Neanderthals found out the hard way that survival sometimes meant turning on their own. Excavations revealed a gruesome truth: bones belonging to at least 12 individuals, including children and even an infant, all bearing unmistakable signs of cannibalism. Deep-cut marks on bones and shattered limbs suggested they were stripped for meat and marrow. The real kicker? These weren't victims of some violent raid. This was likely a family, forced into the unthinkable by sheer desperation. While Neanderthals showed strong social bonds, evidence suggests those bonds could be severed when starvation loomed. And El Cidrón wasn't an isolated case. Other sites reveal similar gruesome evidence, proving that even our ancient relatives weren't above doing whatever it took to stay alive. It's a stark reminder that when pushed to the edge, survival instincts will always override sentiment. Number 13, ancient chemical warfare. War isn't just about who has the biggest army. It's about who fights the dirtiest. And 2,000 years ago in Dura Europos, Syria, the Persians proved just how ruthless they could be. During a siege against the Romans, the battle moved underground as both sides dug tunnels to outmaneuver each other. The Romans, thinking they had the upper hand, charged in, only to walk straight into a gas chamber. The Persians had been one step ahead, setting sulfur and bitumen on fire to unleash a cloud of toxic fumes. As the Romans rushed forward, they inhaled the burning gas, clawing at their throats and collapsing where they stood. When archaeologists uncovered their remains centuries later, the bodies were still frozen in their final moments of agony. It was a death trap engineered with terrifying precision, proof that even in the ancient world, war wasn't just about brute force. It was about outthinking your enemy in the deadliest way possible. Number 12, books bound in human skin. Some books transport you to another world. Others, they make you question your entire existence, and this is one of them. Tucked away in Harvard's library is Des Destinées de l'âme, an otherwise unremarkable 19th century volume, until you realize it's bound in human skin. Dr. Ludovic Bouland, a 19th century physician, created it using the preserved skin of an unclaimed female body. But he wasn't alone. This wasn't some one-off experiment. Anthropodermic bibliopagy, the practice of binding books in human flesh, was surprisingly common from the 16th to 19th centuries. Some books were bound using the remains of criminals, while others, especially medical texts, were crafted from anonymous corpses. Out of the many rumored examples, at least 18 have been scientifically confirmed to be the real deal. Ethically disturbing? Absolutely. But it's also a reminder that history isn't just about grand battles and lost civilizations. Sometimes, it's about the unsettling things humans did just because they could. Number 11. A necromancer's portal to the underworld. Not all caves are just caves. Some hold secrets no one was meant to uncover. In the Judean hills of Israel, archaeologists stumbled upon something straight out of a horror story. A cavern filled with human skulls, daggers, oil lamps, and an eerie stash of gold, silver, and bronze coins. The way the objects were arranged suggested this wasn't just a burial site. It was a ritual space. In ancient times, caves were believed to be gateways to the underworld, thin places where the dead and the living could interact. The presence of weapons alongside skulls hints that this wasn't some casual offering. Ceremonial sacrifices may have been involved. Whether the cave was used by a lone necromancer or an entire cult remains unknown, but one thing is clear. Whoever practiced their dark arts here wasn't just playing around. Even today, the cavern carries an unsettling energy, because some places never fully let go of their past. Number 10. The shackled dead of Athens. Athens, the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and apparently, mass executions. In 2016, what started as a routine construction dig turned into something ripped straight out of a historical horror movie. Beneath the bustling city, workers uncovered the Filipino Delta necropolis, an ancient cemetery with over 1,500 skeletons. But nothing compared to the discovery of 80 bodies, all shackled at the wrists, arms raised in a silent plea that went ignored. Forensic analysis revealed they were young, healthy, and uninjured, yet their hands were still bound in rusted chains. The best theory? They were likely executed followers of Cylon of Athens, an Olympic champion turned failed revolutionary in 632 BC. But here's the creepy part. Why leave the shackles on? Did their executioners fear some post-mortem revenge? Or were they in such a hurry to erase them from history that they didn't bother? Either way, these prisoners were silenced, both in life and in death. Number 9. The eternal scream of the mummy. Mummies are creepy, but a screaming mummy? That's next-level nightmare fuel. Meet Man-E, better known as the Screaming Mummy, a twisted relic of ancient Egypt whose final expression is one of sheer frozen agony. When archaeologist Gaston Maspero unwrapped him in 1886, he knew something was off. Unlike other pharaohs and nobles laid to rest in golden splendor, this poor soul was tossed into a plain wooden coffin wrapped in sheepskin, a sign of impurity in Egyptian culture. Even worse, his body hadn't been properly embalmed, organs still intact, mouth wide open in a permanent chilling shriek. So what happened? Some believe he was poisoned. Others think he was buried alive, forced to suffocate in terror. The leading theory? He was Prince Pentawere, son of Rameses III, executed for plotting his father's murder. Whatever the dark truth, his death was brutal enough to leave him screaming for eternity. Number 8. The man swallowed by stone. Getting lost in a cave is terrifying. Getting stuck in one for 150,000 years? That's the stuff of nightmares. Deep in Italy's Lama Lunga cave, archaeologists found something that looked straight out of a horror movie. A fossilized human figure, his bones fused to the rock like a lost soul turned to stone. Meet Altamura Man, a Neanderthal who had the absolute worst luck. Experts believe he fell into a sinkhole while hunting, shattering bones on impact. Trapped, alone, and with no way out, He starved to death. His body slowly calcified over time as water dripping from the cave ceiling encrusted him in mineral deposits. Fast forward to 2015, when scientists finally extracted a piece of his skeleton, confirming he's the oldest Neanderthal ever found. Thanks to advanced 3D scans, we now know what he looked like. A rugged, ancient face staring back at us from deep in prehistory, forever trapped in stone. Number 7. The shrieking death whistles of the Aztecs. What's worse than knowing you're about to be sacrificed? Hearing the sound of 100 tortured souls screaming as you're dragged to the altar. Welcome to the nightmare that is the Aztec death whistle. Archaeologists in Mexico City weren't expecting anything weird until they unearthed a skeleton clutching 2 tiny skull-shaped objects. When did they finally test one? The sound it produced was so blood-curdling that even modern researchers felt their stomachs drop. These whistles weren't just for show. Some historians think they were played during human sacrifices, ensuring that the last thing the condemned heard was the wailing of the damned. Others believe Aztec warriors blasted them before battle, flooding enemy ranks with raw animal terror. Imagine hundreds of these screeching through the darkness, making it sound like the underworld itself had cracked open. Yeah, no thanks. Whatever their purpose, they're scary. Number 6. The man-eating beasts of Teotihuacan. Sacrifices were brutal enough in ancient civilizations, but Teotihuacan priests didn't stop at just killing people. They fed them to jaguars. Archaeologists exploring this once mighty Mesoamerican city discovered something chilling: underground chambers packed with human and animal remains. But these weren't just any animals. These were apex predators. Jaguars, pumas, and wolves are all carefully kept in captivity. The real horror? When scientists analyzed their diet, they found high levels of maize. And in ancient Mesoamerica, maize was primarily eaten by humans. In other words, these big cats weren't just eating any meat. They were eating people. Evidence suggests that victims, whether captured enemies or unfortunate civilians, were thrown into the pits alive, left to be torn apart as part of a sacrificial ceremony. Whether this was an offering to the gods or an execution method too gruesome to imagine, one thing's for sure: Teotihuacan wasn't a place you wanted to get on the wrong side of. Number 5. The bizarre mermaid mummy of Japan. Deep inside a Japanese temple sat something so strange, so unsettling, that it blurred the line between folklore and reality. A shriveled, gnarled creature with the upper body of a human and the twisted, fish-like tail of something that had no business existing. Known as the mermaid mummy, this relic had been quietly displayed at the Enjuin Temple for centuries, fueling legends of fishermen who had hauled it in from the sea sometime in the 1700s. Some believed it granted eternal life, others feared it as a curse waiting to be unleashed. Then modern science stepped in, and, surprise, it wasn't exactly what the legends claimed. X-rays and DNA analysis revealed a Frankenstein's monster of sorts: monkey bones, pufferfish skin, and animal hair all sewn together with eerie precision. But while it may not have been a real mermaid, it was something just as fascinating: a handcrafted talisman created to bring protection and mystery in a world where myth and reality often overlapped. All right, guys, now let's talk about Number 4. The unsettling faces of Europe's bog bodies. Imagine stumbling across a 2,000-year-old body, perfectly preserved, down to the wrinkles on its skin and the stubble on its chin. That's the reality of Europe's bog bodies, ancient corpses mummified not by human hands, but by nature itself. Trapped in the oxygen-starved, acidic peatlands for millennia, these bodies emerge eerily intact, with leathery skin, intact hair, and stomach contents that reveal their last meals. Take the Tolland man, found in Denmark in 1950. His face looked so peaceful, you'd swear he was just sleeping. But the rope still wrapped around his neck tells a different story. One of ritual sacrifice, a death offered to gods whose names are long forgotten. Some bog bodies were executed criminals, others unwilling sacrifices, but all of them are eerie time capsules of a past that weren't as far removed from death as we are today. Number 3. The Pit of Death. There's finding a skeleton during an excavation, and then there's finding an entire pit of them, stacked, broken, and discarded like trash. That's exactly what archaeologists in France uncovered. A mass grave so chaotic, it forced experts to rethink early civilization. The 6-foot-deep pit was packed with dismembered limbs, skulls with blunt force trauma, and the remains of infants, children, and adults alike. Some skeletons were missing entire body parts, while others showed signs of brutal execution. Dating back 5,000 years, this pit isn't just an archaeological site, it's a murder scene. But was it an act of tribal warfare, a grotesque ritual, or something even darker? The careless way these bodies were thrown in suggests one thing: whoever did this didn't expect or care for them to be found. And now, thousands of years later, their brutal story is finally being unearthed. Number 2, the Filipino fire mummies. Forget golden sarcophagi and linen-wrapped pharaohs. Deep in the mountains of the Philippines, an ancient tribe took mummification to a whole new level. The Ibaloi people didn't just preserve their dead, they smoked them like jerky. And it started before they even died. Those chosen for mummification drank a special saltwater concoction, slowly drying out their bodies from the inside. After passing, they were set above a low-burning fire for weeks, their flesh shrinking as smoke curled around them. Even weirder? Tobacco smoke was blown directly into their mouths, drying out their insides like a human smokehouse. Once the process was complete, the bodies were folded into tiny wooden coffins and placed inside mountain caves where they remain to this day. This rare and meticulous ritual ended with Spanish colonization, but the fire mummies still rest in their ancient caves, silent, preserved echoes of a forgotten tradition. Number 1. Poland's chilling vampire burials. If you think vampire legends are just for movies, tell that to the 17th century villagers of Poland, because they really didn't take any chances. During excavations, archaeologists uncovered burial sites where bodies had been pinned down with sickles, their skulls severed and placed between their legs, and massive stones shoved into their mouths. The message? Stay dead. These weren't just random acts of paranoia. During the 1600s and 1700s, Europe was gripped by fear of the undead, especially during cholera outbreaks when disease seemed to spread from beyond the grave. Some believed the first victims could rise again, bringing sickness with them. The only solution? Restraining them in ways that would ensure they never got back up. Of course, today we know vampires don't exist. But back then, fear had a way of making people do drastic things. These graves remain a bone-chilling reminder of just how deep superstition ran. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.